Welcome to the 12th Dוקאביב Galilee Film Festival. We're honored to have with us Mrgiט לילאק, the filmmaker of The Circle. And we would like also to thank the Embassy of Estonia for their support in bringing this film to Israel. Our webinar will last for 30 minutes, and we invite you to leave questions in the Q&A section at any time, and I will see them and ask our guest, Mrgiט. Hello, Mrgiט. How are you?
Hello, Dafna. I'm good. Nice to meet you. Nice to be here.
As I told you before on our little chat, I liked your film very much, and I also thought it was very inspiring. You know, we live in a very odd time now. Mm-hmm. And it brings up many thoughts about the future of humanity, the future of living in cities, the future of living apart, all the human connections and whatever. But when did you start filming it? I assume it was before the COVID-19 pandemic.
Yeah, I even finished before the epidemic, and I even had a cinema release before the epidemic. So yes, it was.
What inspired you to, what brought you to the subject? What was the...
Well, because this was the first ever Estonian intentionally created community, and I had heard about this movement before, and it was like a big thing to be happening in our little small Estonia, where we only have a little plus 1 million people. So this was kind of, I don't know, for me, a big thing that they had the courage to actually these traditional schools. And I found out, like, I think there were many like lucky strikes that I had before I started this project, that I heard about 2 months before they moved in there, that they're gonna buy this. I had just enough time to sort of persuade them that I want to go on this journey together with them, and they of course expected this to have a happy ending and create like
on the one hand, it was lucky for you as a storyteller that there was a drama and nothing went, you know, smoothly. But on the other hand, it probably was also a disappointment because they were like a ray of hope.
Well, yeah, but I also told the protagonists and the people involved in the film that my main interest as a filmmaker, as a storyteller, has always been a human being and the human psychology and how we interact in a group situation like that. Social sustainability rather than the permaculture or ecological sustainability, because I think the two are very closely. We somehow underestimate the social. A lot of the eco-villages movement somehow tend to underestimate the social side, especially the ones that are just starting, and they have this idealistic view of themselves, that they have no scars and they have no past.
Yeah, unsolved issue.
Yeah, so they kind of think that it's not going to be so much about the social sustainability, but in all of the established communities that have been around for decades, they have focused a lot, especially in the beginning, on creating the glue within the group, and it takes a lot of effort. And the social sustainability is a basis to make any kind of change on the outside. So that was my focus. And as they did a lot of these social practices, this was kind of their focus as well.
So you just joined them, and from the beginning, I mean, from day one, you were...
Yeah, I didn't but think quite diligently that maybe I should move in there with my family as well, but yeah, no. This would have been a bit too schizophrenic, because filmmaking is quite like psychologically it's draining, and in that case it's like, when do I rest or when do I switch out of it? It was always a relief. Like, it gave you a perspective when you left there, and when you had time to contemplate on the things that happened there and then go back in with fresh eyes. So yeah, I never actually lived there.
From the beginning, it's quite clear that there's going to be some tension, even before. I don't want to give a spoiler or whatever. I don't know if some of the people that are listening now maybe haven't seen the film yet, but it was clear that there's going to be tension. But did you recognize it on the spot, or were you just aware of the drama, when you went away and looked at the material that you've filmed?
No, I recognized it on the spot. I think the tension was between the two founding women, and as I told you before we started this webinar, this power struggle between women is quite often what breaks these great initiatives into pieces, and it just really doesn't matter what triggers it, if it's a love triangle or anything else. It always boils down to the fight between two strong women. So the tension was there from day one, basically, but then it was pretty well hidden, but then I could always spot it. I think I was just still surprised how it got triggered in the end. It was still always, whenever I went in there, I was like always so surprised what had happened in the meanwhile when I hadn't been there for like 2 weeks or a month or something, because it somehow, this group environment acted as an accelerator of human, development. Things happened really quickly, like in the normal society, in the urban environment, things don't happen so fast between like these processes that they were going through individually. And as a group, they were just somehow accelerated. So in these 5 years, I think they lived the life of a normal person's 20 years.
I assume that it's not very surprising to meet very strong characters in a group like that, because, in order to decide that you're going to change everything you know about your life, there must be something, some powerful motive that motivates you. And how big was this group?
The core group was about 12 grown-ups, more or less, yeah. So
it would be expected to have it's expected to have some struggles in.
Of course.
But I thought that they had this circle. They had this, way of solving that was supposed to be a way of, solving these tensions and talking about everything. But
well, they did a lot of these quite extreme social practices that are practiced all over the other intentional communities, like the forum circle, that you really open your emotional side and your blind spot in front of the others. But I mean, it's also straining, and it dragged out their energy, because like they didn't have energy to do anything else besides dig deep in their own psyche and group dynamics. And it's just, they did get a lot of help trying to resolve this conflict. I think they had pretty good moderators for that, who kind of tried to heal them. And at some point it felt like it's possible, but then it went back, collapsed again into the same phase as always. So.
We have a question from the audience. An anonymous attendee is asking if, as a former Soviet country, was it a strange move in Estonia to form such a community?
Yes, indeed, it's a good question. I think one of the problems is also that they try to incorporate the rules and guidance of behavior from Western communities. But if you take it from Sweden, who hasn't been in wars for 200 years, and they've lived in prosperity for, I don't know, 6-7 generations. And for us, we have had this freedom for 25 years. It's a totally different situation. And this we have just right now gained this individualistic freedom, prosperity, financial freedom. So yeah, it's a pretty big leap. So they had to have like really kind of a wider view on the world, not from the spot we were in, but like what is happening in the rest of the world in general. And this movement, or this hyper individualistic way of living, which is just not serving for the best of us, I think.
After they have split into two groups, did you follow them afterwards? I mean, what's the situation now? Who is where? I mean, how big are these two groups? Are they surviving? Are some of them back in town, or?
The core group is actually still living there, but it's only five grown-ups now and 5 children. And they're kind of in this hibernation phase. But the protagonist Lina is now going back there with her new boyfriend from France, and they are actually trying to revive this place in the springtime, hoping to find new people who would like to come and make it now in a different way, like learn from the mistakes, hopefully, and start anew.
And do you think that there's hope?
Well, I think so, but I think the core group needs to be better aligned to the same idea and more dedicated to this venture. Not so much about their personal development, because I think they were a bit more focused and obsessed with their personal development rather than the bigger idea.
It's weird because it's very tempting to watch them from a viewpoint of, asking whether they could be an example for other people. I mean, we are in a crisis, and very much an ecological crisis. And I assume that we would have to look for other ways of living. But communes like that, this struggle, it doesn't give me a lot of hope when watching.
I think it's possible, but we have to somehow face the truth and the blind side and the shadow side of ourselves and the shadow side of humanity in general. Because based on, I think many of the communities that start, they break because exactly because they are so disillusioned and idealistic, and they're not really realistic about their own scars and patterns that they have carried from their childhood and life, and these have to be sorted wherever you go, whichever group, family.
Do you know what was the inspiration for them, for Lina, for example? How did they even come up with the idea of making an eco community?
Lina has been an activist of permaculture and this ecological community movement for 10 years before this. So for her, it was like her biggest passion in life to create something like this, and she really takes it very personally, what is happening in the world. And this apocalypse is like on her very skinny shoulders all the time. So she's like, I think she was the main anchor of this idea in Estonia in general. And she's been around and she's been involved in the global movement for 10 years. So she's not a newcomer.
Yeah.
It just took time to find these 10, 12 people. And they were hoping to find more, like 50 people, but it never got to that.
Have they watched your film?
Yes, of course.
With you, or separately, or together, or
both? Yeah. Well, they watched it before the premiere, and they were all of them were at the Estonian premiere. It was premiered last winter. And then Lina came with me to Prague to this One World festival, and she was actually taking part of the Q&A after the screening in Prague. So yes.
And what were the reactions of the other members?
Well, the reactions were very different. Some people said the reality was 10 times gloomier and worse than what was portrayed in the film, because it lasted the film lasts 90 minutes, but the misery lasted 3.5 years, you could say. But I guess in the end, like, they concluded it's also like a social practice, like this forum practice that they did in there. In a way, it opens the blind side, and when people watch on the big screen, others allow themselves to be shown in this very vulnerability and authenticity, then it somehow moves something in you as well and makes the ice break, and you somehow deal with your own darkness and shadow side when you watch someone dare to open it in front of this bigger audience. So
yeah,
in a way, it's like a communal healing like process for the audience, I guess.
The audience, but yeah, but and also, you know, since I've watched the film, it entered my thoughts. I mean, it's difficult to stop thinking about the problems that they're trying to solve, not on a personal level, but on an eco level. I mean, even if they didn't succeed, we're still facing the problem that they're trying to solve. And that leads me very nicely to your next project, because this is not a one-off. I mean, apparently it's a subject that you're interested in. So can you tell us a little bit more about the project that you're developing at the moment?
Yes, we are actually developing it together with the protagonist of The Circle. Lina is helping me to research. We're doing a 6-series TV series about the 6 most outstanding and radical and established eco-villages of Europe, and show the variety, different focus within this movement, with the aim to somehow create a model that hopefully could be in some aspects replicated in the rest of the society and humankind, be it the urban community, or it doesn't mean that everybody needs to move to the countryside and start growing carrots and shit in the bucket. This is not the answer, but there are things that, so it's a radical switch that really has to be made in order to make any change in the course where the planet is headed, really, is that we drop this hyper-individualistic, needy mindset and somehow switch it to what is good for the community, what is good for the planet, what is good for all of us, not just what is good for me, that I have this platinum credit card in my back pocket and Wi-Fi and a cozy flat.
You said you're trying to follow the most radical and most established communes in Europe, villages like that in Europe. How many are there? Are there plenty of villages in Europe?
I think, yeah, there are tens of thousands actually, but many of them are quite small. But the bigger ones, there are still hundreds, if not thousands.
Where are the main concentrations of eco-villages?
There are very many established ones in Germany, for example. And then in Scandinavia, they focus more on this ecological and permaculture side. But I think the ones in Germany are quite interesting. Some of them come from the 60s and 70s from the free love movement. And also quite a few have been initiated based on the peace movement. Then there's Tamara, of course, in Portugal, which is like the most iconic and most followed center that has grown out of Zeg in Germany. And then there are really big ones as Tamanhor in Italy and etc. But I'm also interested to show, like the previous question was, that how do we replicate this in Eastern European, the post-Soviet countries? So we also want to go to Russia and maybe Ukraine and Croatia. So we're still in a research phase and have been shooting only in one community so far.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned the word radical.
Yeah.
Can you give an example?
Well, I think the switch itself to this kind of lifestyle is quite radical, because exactly like you decide that you are able and willing to drop this hyper individualistic mindset, and many of them practice these kind of unusual relationship patterns. There are no nuclear families, there are no fixed couples, a free love, polyamorous movement, which is like in Tamara very closely linked to the peace movement. So the basic idea is, if we can solve the everlasting conflict between women and men, then there will not be any wars. And also we have to solve the everlasting power struggle between women and women and men. So it's like
maybe the next generation, they all have small children that grow like that from, that's the reality they're familiar with from day one. I don't know. I'm trying to grasp at hope here, Maybe the next generation, they will succeed and have less conflicts.
Yeah, I think it changes generation by generation. And I think the new generation somehow is not so fixated in this individualism, and not so obsessed about owning things. They're more into sharing.
Until it comes to matters of the heart or the body. Apparently, with all the ideology, they found it very difficult to share in your film.
Yeah, but it's also a fact, like scientific fact, that we are, as a human being, we are all 3 lunches away from becoming vandals, and we are able to kill and for food, and this how the food chain is built nowadays. From the chain of supply is just so ridiculously long that if one day we cannot buy food from the supermarket like we can now and take it for granted, then things are not going to be.
Yeah, we'll have to eat our neighbors.
Yeah, I think so.
There's another question from the audience. They would like to know a little bit more about the documentary industry in Estonia. If you could just tell us a little bit about what's going on there. Is there a lot of many productions?
No, it's a very small industry here. I don't know the figures now by heart, but maybe 15 documentaries per year or something like that.
Mm-hmm. So you're quite prominent as a director, if you're one of them.
Yeah, but the situation actually is quite hopeful, because the past year and a half we have had some pretty good box office successes in the theaters for documentaries, and we actually have gotten really good cinema release and good audience numbers. So that is really hopeful, that people are into going to the movie theaters to watch documentaries. Well, not at the moment so much, but still.
Are you getting any public funding for documentaries in Estonia?
Yes, we have the Estonian Film Institute, and then the Cultural Endowment, and then the public broadcasting. So it's a three public sources.
Your new project is going to be a TV series, but will we have any chance of watching it somewhere else? Will it be, I don't know, are you hoping to sell it to?
Yes, this is not aimed for Estonian television or Estonian audience specifically at all, because it will be in English, and we're looking for co-producers now, so it will be probably a co-production of 4 countries, something like that, and we are hoping, of course, to sell it to many European broadcasters. And actually there is a commune in Israel, that a kibbutz that with an ecological focus, that we have also on our list of research, that it might be one destination.
You also said that in the eco-village in Portugal, you met Israelis and Palestinians.
Yes,
members of the group.
This was actually a really interesting meeting. I met Aida Shibli, who is one of the teachers in this Tamara Love School. She's a Palestinian, and they started as a peace group in Israel together with 3 people. It was her and an Israeli lady, and then an American man came in, and they were working pretty well until this man came between them. So it wasn't due to any ideological or political disagreements that this group didn't work out or had to split. But once again, the conflict was based on exactly the same kind of personal drama and power struggle between women. Yet again, another example. So it's a very universal thing happens.
But the fact that they're all over there together in Portugal really gives me hope, I have to say.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much, Margit.
Thank you.
I am looking forward to you finishing your new project, and I would like very much to watch it.
Mm-hmm.
And I really hope that next time, you will be presenting it in person in Tel Aviv.
Yeah, me too. I'm so happy to be part of even the online version of Dokaabiv.
Thank you very much, and good luck with the series as well.
Bye-bye.